What's up guys, welcome back to another video, and this one is going to be particularly interesting and quite unexpected, to be honest, because Temporal, the most renowned data miner for Battlefield, I would say, has come around again. He kind of hung up his data mining pickaxe, if you will, but he's come back, it seems, maybe just this once, and actually begun to dig into the Battlefield Labs playtest files. And well, he's found quite a lot of interesting stuff, as you've seen from the title, about the new jets that are going to be in Battlefield 6. So this really scratches my kind of itch. You guys know me, I absolutely love vehicles in Battlefield, especially when it comes to the jets. So without further ado, if you guys do enjoy the content on the channel, make sure you are subbed up. There's going to be a lot more to come on Battlefield here in the future. And thank you guys, as always, for the support. So for those who aren't familiar with who Temporal is, he basically data mined almost every major patch in Battlefield 2042 when the game first came out, and for subsequent years, and he was always absolutely spot on about it. Now, not everything that he data mined ended up being realized by DICE, or in some situations they actually brought it into the game literally years after he data mined it from within the files. So what you're about to see here is no guarantee that this is definitely going to be in Battlefield 6, and especially not because this is just a playtest after all, it's not the full finished game. Over the past couple of days, he has been sort of active on Twitter. He's been teasing a little bit about this, but now we've got official word from him on what he's actually found in the latest playtest. So he says here, potential aircraft in the next Battlefield game based on data that I've gathered from the playtest client. So first of all, we have two fighter jets here, the F-22 Raptor and then the Su-57 Felon once again, which of course is in Battlefield 2042 at the moment. So for the primary weapon here, we have the M61 Vulcan 20mm cannon. We then have the AIM-9X Sidewinder as secondary, so those are air-to-air missiles. Then we have flares for our first equipment, and interestingly enough, for equipment 2 here, we have the GBU-39, which is actually a guided bomb, not a missile, it's not an AGM, it's a guided bomb, which I suppose could work as a guided missile instead, but it's interesting that they've actually put this in here, because you're going to see in a minute that they've also got attack jets in this game as well. Now, the F-22 really excites me. I know that is one that people have been asking for a lot. It's, you know, a more modern jet that people just really want to see in the game, incredibly maneuverable. The Su-57, I do have to wonder whether or not this may be placeholder. Now, he does say here, friendly reminder, data mine content from playtests doesn't have to be part of the release version and may be added during the live service months or even years later. And he mentions here the X-Pad 4 Draugr in Battlefield 2042, or not at all, like the MGA Saw-K, which was, of course, not added to the game. So famously, the Draugr was actually data mined by Temporal like 2 years, I believe, before it was put into the game. Most of us thought it had been canned and it simply wouldn't make it, but eventually it finally did. So some of these things may not be in the game on release, or they may not be there at all. A lot of stuff was cancelled in Battlefield 2042, most likely because they had to really narrow the scope of the game, at least in terms of content, to get the game in a playable state, because it was just, I mean, a complete shambles when it released, right? He also says, on a personal note, this is not the start of a new data mining journey with frequent updates on every aspect of the game, but rather a brief nostalgia trip for the good old days. So he says he's not coming back here. Well, we'll see about that. You never know, once you have a little taste again, maybe he'll get drawn back in, but we can only hope. Now also, another thing to bear in mind is that David Sirlin has stated, and we have seen, that there are a lot of placeholders directly from Battlefield 2042 in the Battlefield Labs playtest. So the Su-57, it kind of surprises me to see it here again. It is one of the more modern fighters in Russia's army. This is a Russian jet, whereas the F-22 is an American jet. So I wondered about this and sort of asked Temporal, given the prevalence of 2042 placeholders, how confident is he that the Su-57 isn't just that, a placeholder, and is there anything specifically within the files that would suggest it's a different version to the one in 2042? And this is what he said: a lot of the placeholder assets are marked with a legacy reference, although the Su-57 is not, but at the moment, he obviously can't rule it out and say for sure, but it looks like this is going to be in Battlefield 6. So we all know the Su-57. The F-22, it pretty much mimics the F-35. I sort of hope we wouldn't see the F-35 in this game, because Like, we've just had it in so many Battlefield games at this point. It's a great jet and all that, I do like it, but it's getting a little bit samey, even though it is fairly modern. But the F-22 is actually faster than the F-35, so it's, you know, think of it as a better version, essentially, of the F-35, but looks-wise, it's very, very similar, so I think most players are going to look at this jet and sort of say, oh, this just looks like the F-35. So let's move on to the attack jets here. So now we have the F-16 and the JAS-39, the Swedish jet, the Gripen. Yes, I know so many people have asked me, like, Ghost, oh man, I would love to see the Gripen in a Battlefield game, and it looks like it is finally coming. It makes a lot of sense. DICE are Swedish, the Gripen is a Swedish jet. It's about time. Taking a look at the weaponry here, once again we have the M61 Vulcan cannon for the primary weapon, so that's the exact same one that's on the fighter roll jets. Not sure if that's one of them is a placeholder. I would doubt, to be honest with you, that they're both going to have the exact same primary weapon, especially because the attack jets are generally doing close air support, you know, attacking tanks on the ground and whatnot. And then for secondary weapons here, we have the Hydra 70 HE, so high explosive rockets there, and the AGM-65 Mavericks. Then for equipment 1, of course, we have flares, and for equipment 2, we have the Mark 82 air bombs. So these are actually unguided bombs, funnily enough. It's kind of funny because JDAMs back in Battlefield 4, that essentially means, like, guided bombs. And I guess in a sense they were guided because you just picked a spot on the ground and they would fly there and explode, but you couldn't actually, like, laser lock onto a target. They weren't laser guided onto a tank or anything the same way that an AGM would be. So the Mark 82 is a 500-pound bomb that's around 230 kilos or so. It's not the biggest bomb, it's also not the smallest bomb. We don't really know what sort of bombs or what size of bombs we had in Battlefield 4 because JDAMs is an extremely vague term. It literally just means like a guided bomb. So we don't really know what those were to have any sort of comparison there. And to be honest with you, DICE could make the explosion as little or as large as they wanted. It's really just a name. However, based on the fact that the primary weapons of both of these jets, or all four of these jets, is the same, I do think that a lot of this is placeholder. Presumably DICE have maybe some of this in there from the past Battlefield game, from Battlefield 2042. Maybe some of it is just placeholder that they're trying out for themselves. Obviously, they don't seem to have a larger map ready yet for us to test out the jets, so it could just be that they've left some files in that particular build that they branched off for Battlefield Labs that they've been testing internally, but all of this stuff isn't ready, and at the moment they're just getting the actual flight model and that sort of stuff worked out. Now, I do have to say, guys, I am slightly disappointed that we're not seeing or hearing the Sound of Freedom, the A10 Warthog. You guys know I've got a bit of a soft spot for that vehicle. It's not that surprising. In this day and age, the A10 is pretty outclassed by a lot of other modern military aircraft. I think it's just really cool. It's really iconic. People refer to it with a flying gun with a plane strapped onto it rather than the reverse. So this being, you know, a modern military game, it doesn't really surprise me that they're not including it. Now, another thing that people have been wondering about is how is the split of this going to work? Because those of you who've been keeping up with the leaks will know that we have two factions at the moment confirmed. We have NATO, and then we have some sort of PMC or collection of PMCs, the Pax Armata. And so for one team here, we've got two American jets, the F-16 and the F-22, and then the other two jets are a Russian jet and then a Swedish jet. Surely Sweden is going to be on Team NATO, as is America, so what is the Pax Armata going to use there for the attack jet role? Doesn't really make a lot of sense, but again, I'm just sort of spitballing here. We don't really know how this is going to play out. I know a lot of folks would have also liked to see a Eurofighter. I think when it comes to military equipment in Battlefield games, in the same way that people want to see soldiers from all different countries, they want to have voice lines of all different languages, they want to have the camos and the uniforms from all of the different militaries around the world, like especially in NATO. I think people also want the same for their military vehicles. Obviously, DICE aren't going to put like every jet available in the world in the game, but who knows, maybe in some DLCs later on down the line, we will get some of this stuff. I also find it very interesting here that they've given a guided bomb to the fighter jets. That has me thinking, In Battlefield 2042 at the moment, we only really have recently gotten a second kind of jet aircraft. So before that, we just had the fighters, which have AGMs, and then they got access to the rocket pods as well. And then the stealth bomber has sort of taken on the role of what the attack jet used to be in past Battlefield games like 3 and 4. And it looks like in this game, we're now going to have both of those roles back again. So this sort of begs the question, why are they giving bombs to the fighters if the attack jets are also going to be in the same game mode? Well, what I'm thinking is maybe we're going back to the Battlefield 3 way of doing things, where maybe the attack jets are going to be on, for example, Rush and Breakthrough, and then the fighter jets are going to be available on Conquest. To be honest, I hope that isn't the case, because that led to a lot less action in the attack jets, because you could only use them in Rush and BF3, which kind of sucked. And then in BF4, they realized that, I think, and they opened them up in all of the game modes. But to be honest with you guys, none of this matters at all if DICE do a terrible job on the aircraft mechanics. Like, if the flight mechanics for this game are not up to snuff, as they haven't been, in my opinion, in the last few games. The last game that had really good, deep mechanics with a high skill ceiling was Battlefield 4. After that, it all just fell off. I was really not a fan of any of the flight models in Battlefield 1 and Battlefield 5. In fact, so much so that I pretty much just threw in the towel and stopped making content on Battlefield, because I just really didn't like it that much. And at the time, my channel was pretty much solely based around making content on flying the jets in Battlefield games. That's of course changed recently. I'm sort of more of a news channel now, but maybe some of you guys have been around for long enough to remember. Let me know in the comments if you have. But that is absolutely paramount. I will say that the only thing I think they didn't do a great job of in Battlefield 3 and 4 is that the system, the flight model, where you had to sort of keep your speed around 313 as much as possible by braking as you went down the side of your loop and then accelerating up out of the other side, it was very good, but the game did not do a great job explaining how this worked to people at all, which is why I had to go on YouTube and make a bunch of tutorials so people actually figured out how to fly them. Like, there are so many people, and I don't want to sound like I'm boasting here, guys, but a lot of people come to me and say, Ghost, I would have never figured out how to fly if you hadn't made some videos about it. So if they are going to go with such a system, I think they really need to make sure that they convey it in-game and people figure out how to use them so they don't instantaneously die in a dogfight. Because at the moment, the system in Battlefield 2042, to me, where basically as long as you slam on your afterburners and accelerate as hard as possible, that is how you turn as quickly as possible. And that's pretty much all there is to it. Outside of that, you're just doing evasive maneuvers, you're trying to cut the enemy target, you're maybe doing some switches and stuff like that. But it's pretty simple, to be honest with you. I think those two things combined, the evasive maneuvers, whilst trying to maintain a certain speed, it was really, really tough. And it set the amateurs apart from a lot of the pro pilots. And like, there were literal like servers where people would go and practice dogfighting in BF4. You don't really see that kind of thing in 2042 anymore. So I have my fingers crossed. I really hope DICE are going to nail it this time. This is pretty exciting. I'm happy with this selection of jets. F-16 is a win. F-22, the Gripen, of course. Su-57, meh, you know, I would also like to see the A-10, but who knows, maybe we'll get those further down the line in some DLCs, or, live updates, I guess, future seasons. But I've waffled on for quite long enough, so let me know in the comments what you all think about this. Thank you, as always, for watching. Subscribe for more Battlefield, and I will see you all in the next video.